This is CNN Breaking News.
We're following multiple breaking news stories topped by the president's sudden and stunning firing of the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. The president has named CIA Director Mike Pompeo as Tillerson's replacement. I'll speak with Congressman Hurd of the Intelligence Committee and our correspondents and specialists. They're all standing by with full coverage. Let's begin with this big Trump administration shakeup. The word came just before the president headed out to California. Let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta. He's traveling with the president in San Diego right now. So, Jim, take us through this truly extraordinary day.
That's right. Well, President Trump is addressing U.S. Marines here at this base in Southern California right now. But earlier today, he was defending his decision to fire Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, and he was hinting to reporters that more big staff changes could be on the way. As one source close to the White House told me earlier today, the winds of change are blowing.
Mr. President, why did you fire?
President Trump's reality TV-style revolving door keeps on spinning. In this episode, it's Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who was voted off the island, with CIA Director Mike Pompeo slated to take his place.
I've worked with Mike Pompeo now for quite some time. Tremendous energy, tremendous intellect. We're always on the same wavelength. The relationship has been very good, and that's what I need as Secretary of State. I wish Rex Tillerson well.
Sources tell CNN White House Chief of Staff John Kelly told Tillerson he was out on Friday, then made that clear over the weekend. Tillerson's firing is just the latest in a slew of high-profile administration departures. Before leaving for California, the president stated the obvious, that he and Tillerson didn't see eye to eye.
Rex and I have been talking about this for a long time. We got along actually quite well, but we disagreed on things. When you look at the Iran deal, I think it's terrible. I guess he thought it was okay. I wanted to either break it or do something, and he felt a little bit differently. So we were not really thinking the same.
The president's claim that he and Tillerson had been discussing this for a long time runs counter to what he tweeted last December when he said, "The media has been speculating that I fired Rex Tillerson or that he would be leaving soon. Fake news." Tillerson, whose relationship with the president never really recovered after it was revealed that he had called Mr. Trump a moron last year, sounded ready to move on.
What is most important is to ensure an orderly and smooth transition during a time that the country continues to face significant policy and national security challenges.
Another thorn the president seems eager to remove is the Russia investigation. Mr. Trump has latched on to House Republican findings dismissing much of the Russia probe, tweeting in all caps, "The House Intelligence Committee has, after a 14-month-long in-depth investigation, found no evidence of collusion or coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election." But that puts the president somewhat at odds with Pompeo, the man he wants leading the State Department.
I am confident that the Russians meddled in this election, as is the entire intelligence community. And the one before that, and the one before that. They've been at this a hell of a long time.
Though the president is sounding a bit more hawkish on Russia after the British government finding that Moscow was behind the poisoning of an ex-Russian spy on UK soil.
It sounds to me like they believe it was Russia, and I would certainly take that finding as fact.
But he says it's too soon to condemn Moscow.
And as soon as we get the facts straight, if we agree with them, we will condemn Russia or whoever it may be.
The president spent part of the day inspecting prototypes for the multi-billion-dollar wall he envisions for the border, the one he vowed Mexico would fully fund.
We have a lousy wall over here now, but at least it stops 95%. When we put up the real wall, we're going to stop 99%, maybe more than that.
All this as Washington is bracing for more White House turmoil, as the president teased this season of The Apprentice is not over.
I'm really at a point where we're getting very close to having the cabinet and other things that I want.
And the president is reassembling his national security team at a critical time. He'll be bringing on a new Secretary of State just as he's racing toward high-stakes talks with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. And then, of course, there is the matter of picking a new CIA director. The president's pick, as he mentioned earlier today, is Gina Haspel. But Wolf, as you heard from top Republicans all day long, including Senator John McCain, they are raising questions about Haspel and whether she's the right pick over at Langley. Wolf.
Yep, they certainly are. We'll have more on that. That's coming up. Jim Acosta, thank you very much. very much. Secretary of State Tillerson learned of his firing via Twitter, and the top aide who shared that fact was also promptly fired by the White House. Let's go to our senior diplomatic correspondent, Michelle Kosinski. Michelle, it seems like Tillerson was basically told, don't let the door hit you on the way out, and you could really see that in his speech today.
Yeah, it's hard to describe how palpable this was, sitting only feet away from him. This is a U.S. Secretary of State, only recently head of Exxon. To see him barely holding his emotions together, his voice wavering throughout, his face trembling, right after he was suddenly fired from the job. Absolutely not the way he envisioned himself leaving this position. Listen to part of this.
What is most important is to ensure an orderly and smooth transition during a time that the country continues to face significant policy and national security challenges. As such, effective at the end of the day, I'm delegating all responsibilities of the Office of the Secretary to Deputy Secretary of State Sullivan. My commission as Secretary of State will terminate at midnight, March the 31st.
So he's up there. He goes through thanking and mentioning his colleagues, the need for leadership, integrity, and respect, the American public. But in all of this carefully worded and lengthy statement, not one single mention of President Trump. And now we're hearing from more sources, too, saying that, yes, he was called by White House Chief of Staff Kelly on Friday, which was Saturday his time as he was traveling in Africa, but that call was ambiguous. It was along the lines of stuff is moving, it's happening, this is serious, maybe you need to come back, and that he truly did not know that he was losing his job until this morning, until that tweet from President Trump. And I think you could really see that in the emotion as he delivered that message, Wolf.
You've been covering him from the beginning. Was there any sense from him or his team that this firing was imminent?
No, I mean, the rumbling has been there for months. It reached a head around the holidays before the first of the year, where people at the White House were saying, we're just waiting for Tillerson to punch out, his time's up. But then they seemed to reach some kind of agreement, he and the president. It seemed like things were fine. Yesterday, one of his senior aides was calling him the Secretary of Stay and talking about his big plans. So while the rumor was there, it seemed like if he was going to leave, it was going to be down the road, at the very least a few months, and on his own terms, Wolf.
What's the state of the State Department right now, Michelle?
Morale is so low that you hear these stories almost on a daily basis of people who say they cry in their car before work. A woman just last week who's been at the State Department for 2 decades, works in human rights, quit suddenly because she said nobody here cares about human rights. There are dozens of open ambassadorships with no nominee from the White House, about 1/3 of senior management, no nominee, and on and on. But there are two factions here. There are people who felt like, even though Tillerson wasn't necessarily setting the world on fire here as Secretary of State, at least not yet, they felt like at least he was a counter to certain White House policies, the Iran deal, Paris climate deal, and on and on. But then there are many people here who are happy to see him go. They felt like he had done nothing to improve morale. And with somebody who is a more political pick like Pompeo coming in, even if they don't agree with him, they at least feel like there's going to be a clearer directive and a clearer, more dynamic mission of foreign policy that will help them do their jobs. Well,
all right, Michelle, thank you. Michelle Kosinski at the State Department. Joining us now, Republican Congressman Will Hurd of Texas. He's a member of the Intelligence and Homeland Security Committees. He's also a former CIA officer. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Wolf, good to be with you.
What message does it send that the President of the United States didn't even have the courtesy to personally call the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, and inform him that he was being fired?
Well, I don't know what message it sends. I probably wouldn't have handled personnel decisions that way. The one thing that I will say, knowing Mike Pompeo, Mike recognizes the need to boost morale in the State Department. Your previous reporter was talking about that. I've heard that from some of my friends that are still there. Mike had to deal with a similar situation, taking over the CIA. There was a lot of change happening in the CIA. Rank and file were frustrated with some of the changes. He was able to come in and and ready to ship. And Mike understands the importance of making sure the rank and file are behind you and have job satisfaction. So I think that's important. But he also, I think, recognizes the need that he needs to be in lockstep with General Mattis. I think the Secretary Tillerson and General Mattis relationship was important. It was a reason that we've had some diplomatic successes. And the fact that you have China working with the United States against North Korea, you have the potential of a sit-down talk with North Korea. Part of that is because of the work that Secretary Tillerson had done in his diplomatic role. So Mike Pompeo understands the issue, and the fact that he's coming from the CIA is going to be good. He's been dealing with these issues. He's met a lot of these foreign leaders, and so I think his learning curve is not going to be as steep as someone who hasn't been in these issues over the last year and a half.
The president will nominate Gina Haspel to become the new CIA director. She'll have to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Senator John McCain had this to say about this career CIA official. Quote, "The torture of detainees in U.S. custody during the last decade was one of the darkest chapters in American history. The Senate must do its job in scrutinizing the record and involvement of Gina Haspel in this disgraceful program." You were in the CIA during this period as well. How do you respond to Senator McCain?
Well, first off, this wasn't Gina's idea. She was following orders. The Attorney General at the time and the President at the time had said this was lawful. And you have to remember where we were at that moment. I'm thinking that another attack was going to happen. I was the fourth employee in the unit on September 12, 2001 that started prosecuting the war in Afghanistan. And at that moment, if you would have said it would have been 17 years before another major attack, I would have said you were crazy. We thought another one was coming. Now, history, hindsight is 2020, but I think saying that Gina was responsible for this, yes, she implemented orders and was doing her job. Gina is a solid professional. She has great experience. She's smart, she's talented, she's tough. She has the support of the rank and file, and having, there's not going to be much of a transition issue with her going from the deputy position to the head of the CIA. She's going to answer all the questions. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting confirmation process, but it's really exciting, and it's also exciting to have the first female to potentially lead such an important organization.
Yeah, she'll have to answer a whole bunch of questions during that confirmation process. Let's turn, Congressman, to your work on the House Intelligence Committee, your Republican report. We got the gist of it yesterday. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence says they stand by the January 2017 report on Russian meddling in the election. But earlier today, you said they relied in that January 2017 report on what you called substandard intelligence. That's quite an accusation. Why do you think the House Intelligence Committee Republicans are in a better position to make that assessment than the major U.S. intelligence agencies, not only the ones that existed during the Obama administration, but during the Trump administration as well?
Great question, Wolf, but let me make sure to clarify that. I completely support the fact that the Russians tried to manipulate our elections. This is something that all Republicans agree on the committee. This is something that the Democrats on this committee agree. But when it comes to the analytical judgment that this was done in order to favor one candidate or the other, that information was relying on substandard reporting. It was stuff that when it was originally collected, that was left, in essence, on the cutting room floor and wasn't included in this report until after the fact. I've read all the underlying intelligence. I've read all the underlying operational cables that supported some of these issues, and we also talked to senior analysts within the organization about the process of which the ICA was made didn't follow some of the standard process. Now, why were the other agencies that agreed with the ICA and all the elements of the ICA, did they know about the process that went through? Did they assume that it was handled the way that most these kind of intelligence assessments were. I don't know the answer to that. But let me be clear: we're not criticizing the men and women within the CIA that collect information. To be honest, when this information was collected at first, it was handled properly. The case officers, everybody involved in this, was doing the right thing. The question is how folks at the end of the process used what can be considered as some standard reporting.
So you consider that obviously a major blunder. I'll just point out the statement that was released by Brian Hale. He's the spokesman, the current spokesman for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, headed by Dan Coates. The statement is this: the intelligence community stands by its January 2017 assessment assessing Russian activities and intentions in recent U.S. elections. We will review the House Permanent Select Committee Intelligence Committee report findings, but as of now, they disagree with you. They clearly stand with the original assessment, which was done more than a year ago. But on that point, we'll see what happens down the road.
Absolutely, Wolf. And I think, I don't know at that point if they've seen our report. It's a draft report. It's about 150 pages.
Well, you haven't released it publicly yet. We have none of us have seen it.
Right? No, absolutely, because it has to go through the declassification process as well. We're also getting input from our Democratic colleagues. We'll be taking feedback from the intelligence community as well, and that's why it's a draft report. Unfortunately, when it comes to classified stuff, things get leaked and people talk about it before we're able to get all the details out into the public domain.
Yeah, well, we'll see if the intelligence community then and now has made a major blunder, which you suggest is the case. We'll find out fairly soon.
And Wolf, and again, with the agreement is that the Russians were trying to get involved and manipulate our elections, and so we need to move to the point where how do we make sure that we're protecting ourselves from that in the future.
Congressman Hurd, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
Up next, the longtime person.
Hi everybody, just a quick reminder, Mox News survives solely on your tips and contributions. It's easy to make a contribution or a tip or leave a tip at moxnews.com, or there are clickable links in the text body of this video. It should take the average person, most people, probably less than 2 minutes. Thanks very much for your time and your continued support. Stay cool one of these days, this war is going to end. Till that day.